In the 1930s, the Soviet Union wanted to prove they were the masters of the sky. This act details the illegal architecture of the Kalinin K-7. Unlike a normal plane, the K-7 was essentially a flying wing with two massive tail booms. The wings were so thick, over 7 feet deep, that the crew lived and worked inside them. We explore the internal city. Mechanics would literally walk through the wings while in flight to service the 7 engines. We look at the terrifying firepower, a flying tank with enough machine guns and cannons to cover every single angle of approach, making it the most heavily armed object in the sky.
As the K-7 roared into the sky for its initial tests, the Soviet engineers realized they hadn't just built a plane, they had built a massive flying tuning fork. This act focuses on the forbidden physics of flutter and resonance. Because the tail booms were so long and the airframe so heavy, the massive engines created a rhythmic vibration that began to tear at the experimental chrome molybdenum steel. We explore the illegal fix. Rather than redesigning the airframe from scratch, which would have been an admission of failure to Stalin, Konstantin Kalinin ordered the addition of a 7th pusher engine at the rear. This was a desperate attempt to use engine thrust to stiffen the tail in mid-air, a move that bypassed every safety protocol of 1930s aviation. The technical scandal of this act is the cockpit of chaos. Because the K-7 was so enormous, the mechanical cables required to move the rudders and ailerons were incredibly heavy. To solve this, Kalinin installed an illegal early form of power steering, electric boosters that were notoriously unreliable. We detail the harrowing accounts of the test pilots who described the controls fighting back. During high-speed runs, the resonance was so violent that the cockpit windows would crack and the pilot's vision would blur from the sheer intensity of the shaking. This segment examines the forbidden silence of the engineers. Despite knowing the tail was structurally compromised, the pressure to deliver a Soviet superweapon meant that all negative reports were buried under layers of state bureaucracy. The final minutes of Act II covered the propaganda illusion. To the public, the K-7 was a triumph of communist engineering, often photographed from angles that hid its vibrating tail booms. But inside the flying Ziggurat, the truth was terrifying. We described the mechanics who were forced to climb into the wings during flight, while the engines were screaming to tighten bolts that were literally being shaken loose by the harmonic resonance. This act concludes with the final, fateful decision to push the K-7 to its maximum speed for a government demonstration, setting the stage for a structural failure that wasn't just a possibility, but a mathematical certainty.
The final act of the Kalinin K-7 is a haunting study in how state-mandated pride ignores the breaking point of steel. This segment covers the illegal disaster of November 21, 1933. During a high-speed trial designed to prove the K-7 could serve as a long-range bomber, the aircraft was pushed to its absolute atmospheric limit. We detail the terrifying final seconds as the pilot throttled the 7 massive engines to full power. The harmonic resonance reached a crescendo. The vibration became a physical wave that traveled down the tail booms. In a sudden, catastrophic structural failure, the right tail boom snapped.
The massive aircraft, stripped of its stability, flipped violently and plummeted into the earth at over 200 miles per hour. We explore the aftermath of fire in grueling detail. The K-7 didn't just crash because of its massive internal fuel tanks and forbidden steel construction. It erupted into a fireball that could be seen for miles. 14 men, including some of the Soviet Union's most brilliant flight engineers, were killed instantly. This act dives into the Great Erasure, the state-sponsored conspiracy to delete this failure from history. The Soviet secret police moved in immediately, cordoning off the crash site. Witnesses were intimidated, and the wreckage was cleared within 48 hours. The K-7 was scrubbed from official newsreels as if it had never existed, replaced by images of smaller, safer aircraft to maintain the illusion of Soviet perfection. The technical scandal of the cleanup was the suppression of the autopsy. Independent engineers who inspected the remains found that the chrome-molybdenum steel had crystallized from the constant vibration, a phenomenon called metal fatigue that was poorly understood at the time. However, acknowledging this would have meant admitting the entire Soviet steel industry was producing illegal or subpar materials. Instead, the blame was shifted entirely onto the humans involved. We detail the tragic trial of the dead, where the deceased pilots were initially blamed for reckless handling of a perfect machine. The final minutes of the act detail the fate of the designer. Konstantin Kalinin became the ultimate scapegoat. Despite trying to salvage the project with plans for a K-7 bis, a fixed version, he was marked as an enemy of the people. In 1938, during the height of the Great Purge, he was arrested by the NKVD. We cover the forbidden records of his final days, a man who gave everything to Soviet aviation, executed in a basement for the crime of a mathematical error he wasn't allowed to fix. We conclude with the ghost of the K-7, a warning that in the race for superplanes, the laws of physics are the only laws that cannot be silenced by a dictator's decree.